I think we will get to a world where the shopping experience of ChatGPT feels more like I have a query, I'm looking for something, it's text-based, maybe it's similar to what we have today, but the output actually inside of the ChatGPT experience probably looks more like a Shopify site. And then if you believe that's true, then honestly, like the retail media fits in pretty nicely. So if you think that the experience on ChatGPT is going to feel like Shopify, then it's not that much of a stretch to think about what retail media inside of that Shopify experience, inside of ChatGPT looks like. That makes sense.
Welcome to Unlocking Retail Media, the podcast where we explore the evolving world of retail media, from data strategy to monetization and everything in between. This is the podcast that breaks down how retailers can build smarter, data-driven media networks by aligning with what brands truly need, from scalable ad solutions and meaningful metrics to cross-channel attribution and programmatic strategy.
Today, I'm excited to host Matt Nichols. Matt is a partner at Commerce Ventures, a firm that stands out as one of the most active investors in the retail and retail media ecosystem. We'll be diving into the major trends and some of the investments that Matt is making and seeing in the ecosystem. We're going to talk about the rapid growth of the retail media market and the transformative impact of AI and generative commerce on retail in general. We'll also explore the shift towards marketplace models and lean supply chains that are reshaping how retailers and brands operate, ultimately providing a comprehensive, high-level view of the entire retail commerce space.
All right, welcome to Unlocking Retail Media. Today we're joined by Matt Nichols with Commerce Ventures. Thanks for joining, Matt.
Great to be here.
So I thought, I'd start this out as, this is a little bit of a different episode because Matt is an investor with, one of the kind of bigger investment funds in the retail and retail media space. So as opposed to kind of talking about just what it takes to run a retail media network, we're going to talk a little bit more about the kind of industry as a whole and kind of what's happening in the industry, what, companies are being funded, what Matt has seen as kind of the trends in the industry and kind of a little bit of a broader view. But I want to start it out actually in preparation for this. So Matt is one of our investors at Kevel. So we've been working together since 2020, spent a lot of time together. But I was curious, I was trying to think, when did we initially first meet? And how did that happen? So I went and looked at my, searched Google and clicked back 20 times and then found that it was a LinkedIn connection. So I went and found it on LinkedIn because of course LinkedIn keeps the messages forever. So this is the initial one. Intro to commerce-focused VC, Matt Nichols. James, sorry for the cold outreach, but I'm a partner at one of the most active retail tech-focused funds, Commerce VC. I've been trying to make an investment in the next generation hook logic. I came across you guys. I was wondering if you'd be open to connecting. Then there's some other stuff. But this was December 10th, 2019. So I think one of the cool reasons to have you on here, Matt, is you kind of saw this trend before it was happening. Obviously, hook logic had existed. But you kind of read ahead, and now we were kind of in the throes of retail media where everything's retail media, but that definitely wasn't the case in 2019.
Yeah, so I mean, maybe I can tell you that my history with retail media, my history broadly, and then maybe that'll lead into sort of how this thesis came about. So yeah, I'm Matt, I'm a partner here at Commerce Ventures. Been a venture firm. It's been around for about 13 years, based out of SF. I've been in venture since 2002, so a long time across a couple different venture funds. Although in the middle of my venture capital career, I took a 5-year detour where I ran this direct-to-consumer e-commerce business. It was a jewelry business called Gemvara, backed by a bunch of well-known venture capital firms. We ultimately sold that business to Berkshire Hathaway. And why it's relative to retail media, when we were acquired, I was running Berkshire's B2B2C jewelry business. And at the time, the entity that bought us was probably the biggest seller of crappy gold jewelry on Amazon, Macy's, and a bunch of other places. And I remember one of our goals was, we were a big seller in Macy's, and then we're trying to figure out what are ways that we can get more of our jewelry to show up on Macy's.com. And I remember we were using hook logic, and it was honestly the only thing that worked way back then. So fast forward to Commerce Ventures, looking at various trends that happened in the marketplace. Amazon had started to build a reasonably sized retail media business. At that point, the light went off and said, there really hasn't been any innovation in this market since hook logic. And actually predating my post to to James, I think what the post that someone else identified James for me was, I put a post out there that says, is anybody on LinkedIn, is anybody building Hook Logic 2.0? And I think someone reacted to it and said, I know this guy James who's running Kevel, which is what prompted me to do the cold outreach. So that's the sort of the story arc of me being involved in retail media in the early days, and then seeing sort of the genesis of it happening on Amazon, and then realizing, hey, look, everybody else is going to want to get in this game. Hence the outreach to James.
Well, now I need to go find the LinkedIn post that you posted about, is anybody building Hook Logic 2.0, and see who I owe a thank you.
I would go back and we'll go find out who it was. I forget who actually made the connection. So
that was back in, so that was in 2019. Obviously, you guys invested in our A round in 2020, but in between we kind of saw COVID hit, which caused a big acceleration in e-commerce. I think it caused an acceleration in retail media. We saw citrus ad kind of, grow a lot out of that. But now we're kind of 5 years later. How do you think the market's kind of developed and kind of what you expected?
Yeah, I mean, I think back then, really the only options available to folks were sort of like totally roll it yourself, the Amazon way, or honestly, like totally outsource it. And that was the Hook Logic, citrus ad approach. I think what I like then and continue to like about what you all at Kevel have done is finding a way for there to be a middle ground here. I think what has happened is that retail media has just gotten so big that I think for the largest players, I think you can't afford to fully outsource it. And I think that's what's changed, which is, some of them hit the easy button and using some of these platforms, but a realization of this can't be a sort of a secondary thing to my business. This is so core that I want to own it, but at the same time, don't want to own the core technology. And I think that's where you all have been really successful at helping these large retailers bring this sort of customization, uniqueness of the retail media offering to their sites and not sort of fully outsource. And I think that's been the biggest change, as people have realized how important and sort of durable retail media has been.
And do you think that, I know one of the things you guys end up doing is talking to a lot of the really higher up leadership at retailers, right? I won't name their names, right? But a lot of them are like LPs in the fund or kind of do tech roadshows with you. So you kind of get an interesting angle of not just the people running like a retail media network, but the CEO of the multi-billion-dollar retailer. Like,
Yep.
has the amount that you hear from them about retail media increased, or do you think it's about the same? Or, what do you feel from those like higher up executives?
Yeah, I think it's definitely increasing. And part of it is you just can't ignore this for executives that have run low margin retail businesses, the allure of this massive amount of money that the Amazons, the Instacarts, et cetera, of the world have been able to monetize. You just can't afford to miss it. So I think the pressure they are putting on their teams has only increased to accelerate the efforts in these areas. So I think it's definitely happening more and more.
Yeah, and if you can only yell at your outsourced provider so many times to increase revenue. Sometimes you have to like take it into your own hands and do it.
Yep. Totally. Yeah. I mean, I think, you if it becomes that core, you want someone that you can control, which is usually, someone in your own team or someone that's working directly for you, rather than, tapping into some less differentiated network out there.
Yeah. So, and I guess similar question, but kind of not just focused on retail media. Like what, you talk to hear up from all these executives. What are the other things on their radar? Like where are you guys kind of looking at making investments and in the retail space?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest topics out there is, we call it agentic commerce, but I think it's the rise of AI and the implications for AI on how consumers are finding and ultimately purchasing products, services, et cetera. And I think there is a huge amount of downstream things that have to happen, or thought differently, or said differently. There are a huge amount of things that retailers and brands are needing to do to, I would say, one, bring some of that AI magic to their sites so that someone continues to shop on Target.com, Tesco.com, wherever it might be. So bringing some of that magic that all these consumers are now experience on ChatGPT or Perplexity, bring that to their site. So we made some investments in that space, like fundamentally improving search and doing a bunch of different things. And I can come back to that in a second. And then secondly, so that's sort of like, how do we preserve the status quo, the pre-AI status quo? People used to come into our .com sites, but then also realizing there will be some amount of people. It can be, you can argue it's going to be everybody, which I don't believe in. I don't believe it's going to be nobody. There's going to be a decent number of people who will be engaging with your brand, your service, and your products in these platforms and trying to set yourselves up for that. So I think about sort of feed management technologies to get your products out there so that ChatGPT finds them and can recommend them. I think there's a set of transactional capabilities so that someone could actually make a purchase in those AI platforms, have the merchant of record still be the retailer, the brand, et cetera. And there's a bunch of tooling and things that are required there. So we're looking at sort of all of those areas as sort of interesting capabilities that I think retailers and brands will need to invest in, given what's happened in the sort of AI world. And this is in addition, obviously, to all of some of the efficiency plays, of which there are a lot as well. So,
and how do you think? I mean, this is now becoming like the hot topic. I guess we're going to ask every guest, because I talked to Mark about this a little bit too, which is, how do you think that affects retail media? Like, I think it's the big question. A lot of people, if people are shopping in ChatGPT, how many people are going to do that? How does it affect the business that we're in?
I think there's going to be two impacts, right? I think there's one, which is, how does AI change retail media on sites? So I think one of the biggest changes that we'll see from people bringing this AI tech to their sites is that there's this, like, there'll be a move away from keyword-based tagging, right? Historically, to give consumers a great experience, to help them find the products they wanted, you had to think about all the characteristics of these products beforehand. And then when the consumer did a search, usually with a keyword, that would surface the right products to those consumers. And I think the biggest change with AI is your ability to utilize, not in real time, utilize these large language models to figure out all of these associations between products that a human probably could never have figured out, and bring those associations to your site such that searches that consumers do on the site deliver what they're fundamentally looking for based on all these connections that live out in the internet, and not just the ones that you've been able to capture in tags. So I think about how that impacts core retail media. I think the opportunity for retail media is actually just as big, if not bigger. It's just the way that people will be bidding on these language searches on sites may have to change. So I think there's going to be some innovation there to bring, like, how does retail media look like when it's a lot less keyword oriented? So I think that's like sort of a, not a positive or negative, but just a change that I think you'll have to think through on the retail media businesses.
I think we're seeing more and more of that already, just in the way that people are bidding, right? It's like we want, we're trying to encourage brands to think about less specificity in their campaign and less about it's only these keywords and these geos. And it's more of, hey, I want to sell more of this product. Just sell more of this product. Right. Like, you don't have to over specify. Let our machine learning, or anybody's machine learning, do the work to say, here's where, here's the best place to show this ad or this product listing or whatever, to drive a conversion, as opposed to somebody coming in and saying, this is ketchup, so I want to advertise on ketchup and hot dog and mustard and assume that that's the right stuff, when it turns out some people are searching for picnic items, right? Or something crazy, right?
And I also think just the ability for AI in general to help optimize that, right? I mean, historically, it's just been sort of humans like hacking at what they think the right bid for that, ketchup keyword should be. And I think there's going to be an opportunity to sort of self-optimize utilizing AI, so that really your goal is to sell more ketchup, right? That's your goal. Your goal isn't to do ads on the ketchup keyword. So figure out what things I should be advertising against. And maybe it's mustard, or maybe it's ketchup. I don't know. But like, what's the right way to optimize those sales? And I think that will accrue to everybody's benefit, because I think the better that retail media works, the better it works for the retailers and the better it works for brands. The ROI goes up, they spend more money, and that's like an additive function of bringing sort of that AI optimization to advertising. And I think that's a broader trend that we're seeing across retail generally, of like moving from systems that were designed to be workflow tools, where the human was like, how do you make it as efficient as possible for people to do that keyword bidding in this case? Or another example I'll use is like email marketing. So every email marketing platform in the history of time has been focused on how do you create segments, flows, and content, and moving from that like sort of workflow tool to a self-optimizing tool where the AI is thinking who are the segments, who are the content, who are the flows, and then trying something, seeing the results, and iterating in a way that just humans can't do in any of these realms. So I think that's another really interesting thing about AI is just, again, tools moving from workflow to self-optimizing systems.
Yeah, it's really more about getting to what's the outcome you're desiring. Right. Like in the email marketing standpoint, you're like, I want more people to, subscribe to our mailing list post-purchase.
Yes.
And letting the system figure out, oh, here's how I'm going to do that. Do I send it the day after? Do I send it 2 days after? Do I send it 3 minutes after? Do I send this message? Do I send this message? Do I, et cetera, et cetera. Like you're right. It can do the work of a very qualified person and just brute force it and figure out this is what works. This is what I'm going to do.
Yeah. I mean, you think about it, it's surprising that we've gone so long without that, right? Like to be able to optimize the revenue from your email campaign, someone has to have tested the right thing, seen what things worked and what things didn't, and then be thoughtful enough to the next time really write that email differently, send it differently, send it to different people, et cetera, to then generate more revenue. And like, it's just, I don't know, it's not chance today, but it's a lot harder than if AI was really figuring that out.
Well, and you have to consider too, there's so many limitations because of humans doing it that we're only, you're only doing certain permutations, right? Yep. You're saying, oh, I'm going to create 7 different segments for my 1,000 buyers a week versus maybe the right answer is 350 different segments, or the right answer is 0 segments. And it's something custom written for each individual person based on what we know about them. Things that you couldn't do scalably before.
Yeah. And a lot of them are just limited by the content. Like you can only have so many segments because 1, your point, you can't think of that many segments. And 2, even if you could think of that many segments, you drive your creative team mad because they'd have to create content for every one of those segments. And I think that's where those are the sort of things we're unlocking. You also asked a question about like, how is retail media, like as this, I answered this sort of the on-site thing. I think there's another question of like, what does retail media look like when the purchasing is happening on ChatGPT, Perplexity, et cetera? I think that's a much more complicated question because I think those platforms in general, forget retail media for a second, I think they're just trying to figure out what is the advertising mechanism that actually works there. And, just think about what Google search has been all about. It's been all about drawing intent based on the specific search and then delivering a set of paid ads that go alongside a set of, the best 10 websites that Google thinks are relevant to your search. And that kind of worked. It has worked and created the behemoth that is Google.
Well.
It worked pretty well. Incredibly profitable, but because like the deal with the consumer was different, right? There wasn't like Google serving up the right answer. ChatGPT is serving up what they think is the answer, and it's not even totally obvious what the right ad format is to serve against that. And I think there's 2 ways you can think about it. One is how do you monetize those links that are in the thing that ChatGPT has already recommended, and I think about that as like skim links for ChatGPT, which is interesting, but it's not ultimately doesn't capture the power of what Google did. If Google just did that, they would not be nearly as valuable as they are today. They were valuable today because someone could advertise and change your mind, change you to click on this link versus the link that was organic. And that's what people are willing to pay so much money for. And it's not clear yet what format does that and still makes sense in the minds of a ChatGPT user. And I think that's the biggest conundrum that ChatGPT is going to have to figure out how advertising generally, and then probably, it will look sort of like retail media, but it's that fundamental format that I think they have to figure out first before we'll know how it plays out in that AI world externally.
How much do you think people, this is something I go back and forth on with a lot of folks, is how much do you think people will actually just shop in ChatGPT?
I think quite a bit over time. I probably am more on the bullish side than the bearish side on this front. But I think people who say, hey, yeah, people only buy toilet paper on ChatGPT because that's easy and there's no, emotion around it. I think that's maybe true in the way that shopping works on ChatGPT today, which is basically text in, text out, links, etc. I think we will get to a world where the shopping experience of ChatGPT feels more like I have a query, I'm looking for something, it's text-based, maybe it's similar to what we have today, but the output actually inside of the ChatGPT experience probably looks more like a Shopify site. Shopify
Okay.
experience with
Yeah.
products and like, it feels like you are in an e-commerce experience, although you're probably chatting with it rather than clicking and faceting, but like that's a small nuance. So I think a lot of this emotive pieces can actually be brought to that platform. And then if you believe that's true, then honestly, like the retail media fits in pretty nicely. So if you think that
Right.
the experience on ChatGPT is going to feel like Shopify, then it's not that much of a stretch to think about what retail media inside of that Shopify experience inside of ChatGPT looks like. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I think there's a level where I think that makes a lot of sense. I think today, the world of, I want to buy a new TV, help me, decide which TV to buy.
Mhm.
And then it shows you, oh, go ahead and click this button to buy this from Best Buy or Costco or whoever. I think people are still going to go click through and shop, are still going to
I,
go
I
click through
think
to
they might,
Costco, click through to
but
Best Buy.
if
But I think there is a world, like you said, if more of the retailer piece was brought into ChatGPT, it makes sense that you would actually just do your shopping there.
yeah, and a lot of people ask me a reasonable question. I've thought about this too. People are like, well, like the whole Google shopping thing, like that didn't really work that well. You know, Instagram shopping has gotten decently sized, but it's not like TikTok shopping has gotten big, but it's not like changed the world of retail fundamentally. Like, why is that? What is it about AI? Why is there a potential for AI to change shopping experience in a way that those things haven't? Which I think is a very reasonable criticism. My thesis, I don't know if I'm totally sure this right yet or not. The thesis that I have about why more could ultimately happen on AI platforms than did in those other platforms was in those other platforms, if you served out a product in a Google shopping feed or frankly a TikTok shop, I had to serve the exact right product to James, right? Give him exactly the right product. And you had to be in the moment to like, I'm ready to buy, right? I don't need to ask any more questions. I don't need to understand anything about the brand. I don't need to understand about delivery. I don't need to understand anything about the product characteristics, any of those things. I just had to be ready to buy. And I think in most cases you aren't, to your point. You wanted to find some more information. In an AI context, a lot of those secondary questions that you would have historically in those other platforms had to finally click off and go off platforms that you're no longer Google shopping, those can actually happen on the platform, right? They're clunky today, they're done in text, but I think more and more of the shopping journey could be done inside the platform. Therefore, this platform could garner a much higher percentage of purchase transactions than I think any of those platforms that at the high level look similar, but ultimately weren't because you had to get the right shot with no more questions.
Yep. No, it makes sense. It makes sense. Especially, I think the Google shopping analogy is a great one because people today are using ChatGPT as a replacement for search, but Google shopping, didn't have the level of success I think everybody thought it would. But you're right. It's a little, tiny little product listing at the top of search. It doesn't have any of that information. You can't ask Google then, hey, I have a question about that TV. Does it have 17 HDMI ports or whatever you need? Things like that. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. I think the other thing that's going to be interesting is the sort of the consumer data that's going to be gathered as a result of people's shopping agentically, both on ChatGPT, but also on these sites. And like, what is the sharing mechanism going to be between, say, a Sephora and ChatGPT back to Sephora? Because each of those entities, in a commerce perspective, knows a lot of very interesting and sort of proprietary information. Sephora knows all the things that, all the beauty products that someone has bought over the past 5 years, and ChatGPT knows all of the searches that she has done on everything else. And I think delivering the right commerce experience is going to require sort of the bringing together of those two data sets, regardless of whether the consumer is shopping agentically on Sephora or shopping agentically on ChatGPT. And I think we're going to see some interesting data sharing. Maybe it's like ranked catalogs based on a persona or a person, such that both platforms can get sort of the benefit of the understanding of that consumer in ways that are just more rich than I think you could do in a pre-AI world. So I think you'll see some interesting things happen there.
Yeah, it's interesting. We haven't seen push from AI yet. right?
Mhm.
Like when you go to ChatGPT, it's always, I'm starting a new conversation, I'm sharing something. ChatGPT is obviously learning that. Even in each of your different little context windows, you might, if you keep talking to it in the same window, it's learning more and more about what you're talking about. I think one of the interesting things we haven't seen is it doesn't wake up and say, "Hey James, you asked me about this a week ago. How's that going?"
Yep.
Right? Did you end up booking that trip to Colorado, or are you
Yep.
still looking at options? Because I found a better option for you, right? Or you asked me this skincare question, and Sephora actually has a new skincare cream from so and so that could be a good fit for you, right? Like we don't
Yep.
we don't see that yet, but it's not a big leap to think that it wouldn't be hard to implement that from a ChatGPT standpoint.
Totally. Totally.
Now we have a new business model. We're gonna go create AI push from the chat engines.
Yeah.
Well, what else are you like? In the retail space, obviously AI is big, efficiency is big. What do you see, if you look out 10 years for retail in general? Like what do
Yep.
you think the world looks like?
Yeah, I think there's a bunch of interesting changes that are out there. Like one topic that I've been sort of obsessed about for a while is like how supply chains work. I had the benefit of running a basically an inventory free jewelry business. Everything was made to order. And like I saw the power of like operating with super low inventory and be able to react to trends, not have to put stuff on sale, etc. And I've sort of been obsessed about like what are the tools and capabilities that allow a broader set of retailers to have maybe not that full experience, but get closer to that. And so I've been thinking about like what Shein and Temu and Quince and all of these guys have done, which is fundamentally created a new business supply chain model that allows retailers to react to the change in which tastes are changing, like in a way that similar way that what Zara and H&M did to Gap and J. Crew 15 years
Right.
ago. I think they're doing the same to those big fast fashion players. And I think it's not just fashion; it's everything. And because you think about where retail has gone, a lot of the innovation in retail has gone, like Amazon and to an extent Walmart have been totally focused on how do I get products as close to the consumer as possible, right? I got warehouses everywhere, so I can ship fast, so I can get the consumer, like efficiently get a product to the consumer. I think that works for a small set of retailers. Um, I think there's a weirdly with the power of a Shein and or a Temu or a Quince is actually the opposite, which is like how does products live as close to the manufacturer as possible? And if your product lives as close to the manufacturer as possible, you can react really quickly to resupply, stopping resupply, et cetera, in a way that you can't in the other model. And I think it's what's allowed some of these retailers to grow really fast. So in a world where I think tastes are only going to change at an increasing pace, I think changing of the supply chain model is going to be really interesting. And I think this will be, impactful as we talk sort of retail media and marketplace businesses. A lot of marketplace businesses are now looking at that model and saying, wow, I could actually expand my availability of products by enabling some of these brands to utilize this not model and not have to invest a huge amount of inventory bringing to the US to put it on the Walmart marketplace, right? I can sort of be much more nimble, react more quickly, and that enabled them to sort of power the marketplaces and then ultimately drive retail media as some of those brands, like imagine a smaller version of a Quince or a Temu or whatever, being able to supply those marketplaces. So I think we're going to see massive innovation, massive growth in that market as the big guys just get torn up by people who have this as a dedicated model. So a little bit of a side on retail media, but it's the other thing I'm sort of the non AI thing that I've been obsessed with recently.
Yeah, well, based on the number of Quince packages that show up in my house, I think they're doing very well.
They
So
are
I think
doing
that,
incredibly well, and it's just
yeah,
it's but you look at it, but like they never had to put stuff on sale because they never oversell, right? They
yeah.
honestly they undersell sometimes. You try to go buy like the sheets on Quince and they're always like out of stock, etc. But I think they'll get better and better at that. But I think it's a fantastic model, and it's hard to be a retailer with inventory. And if you look at every earnings report from every big retailer, it's usually because they had too much inventory or not enough inventory, at the places where consumers were ready to buy them. So
I mean, what do you think about all the? I mean, because it seems like the trend for the last couple of years has been every retailer launching a marketplace,
yep.
right? Like, obviously Amazon kind of led the way there, but now there's folks like Miracle that are turning this on for every other retailer. Do you think that becomes more prevalent, or do you think that's just a trend that's happening for a while?
I think it will be more prevalent, honestly. I mean, I think if you're big enough to drive the audience to your site, ultimately someone came to your site because they want to purchase. I mean, yes, there are some people who just go to sites just to browse for fun, but like ultimately they're looking for something. And conversion rates are already are low, just on every retailer, almost by definition. And I think if you can augment with augment your first party products with a relevant set of third party products that can live up to your brand reputation from a fulfillment, from a quality product, et cetera, there's almost no downside, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's a function of like how aggressive you go. I think it depends on who the retailer is, but I mean, there's a reason that's been such a powerhouse for growth for Amazon, just because it's a great model, right? You don't take the inventory, you're relying on someone else, and you can scale really quickly. So I think it'll only continue, and I think it just technically is getting easier and easier to be able to launch marketplaces.
And it's a good opportunity for more retail media.
Totally. Yeah, exactly. Because it's those folks, really retail media shines when it's a third party product on some retailer site. And it's all about you as that brand pushing your product to the top. And, I don't know what percentage, I mean, it's what's driving Amazon's retail media business. So makes sense that would drive everybody else's.
What do you think? And I guess last question, we've talked about a lot of stuff that's changing, AI, everybody else adopting marketplaces, kind of a lot of this innovation that's going on. Where do you think Amazon is in 10 years? Are you kind of buying or selling their continued dominance in this space?
It's hard to imagine. I'm still bullish on Amazon. I think they have a fulfillment engine that I think is gonna be really hard for almost anybody else, maybe Walmart, to compete with. And there is undeniably a huge number of products that you want them quickly, and having the delivery networks and the efficiency to deliver those products to the consumer as fast as possible will persist. I think it's interesting to see where they have been vocal about trying to block AI traffic, right? So they don't want this trend to happen because they perceive of themselves as the search destination for commerce and don't want to give up that crown. I think that makes a lot of sense. Honestly, though, even if they were to open things up, the consumers are still going to want to buy from Amazon in many cases because for certain products, because the efficiency, the deliverability, all those things. So they have some sort of unique advantage in fulfillment that I think can persist regardless of the change in how consumers find products. But I just think that their first party sales, i.e. someone coming on Amazon or one of their apps, will be so much more valuable to them than someone doing that and paying any kind of VIG to ChatGPT that they're going to sort of resist for as long as humanly possible. And they'll probably bring some interesting AI to their experiences. I would argue that what they've brought so far is not that interesting yet, but I'd be surprised if they don't bring something that's interesting on Amazon to get people to continue to shop there versus going to ChatGPT. So
I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've seen a product on Instagram or TikTok or somewhere, and then I just go search on Amazon and buy it from there.
Yes.
Because your payment details are in it, you're comfortable it's going to get to your house, you have no concerns. I think I think even if you're buying it through ChatGPT and you're given the option, you're still just going to pick Amazon.
Yes. Oh yeah, but my I would say my ability to call Amazon has been both good and bad. My first investment ever as a human, I invested $1,000 in Amazon stock in 1998, and I took it to $15,000. So at 15x, and I thought I was the smartest guy in the world, and then it tanked, and I felt even smarter. And then unfortunately, I went back and looked at what that $1,000 would have been if I had kept it till today, and I think it was $2.5 million. So,
well, who knows? Maybe you put that 15,000.
I was both right and wrong about Amazon.
Yeah, maybe you put that 15,000 in an even better investment. You never know.
Exactly. So, but
awesome.
Yeah, no, we're optimistic. I think there's just so many with this change from AI, it just creates more and more opportunities for those that are willing to move fast enough to react to it.
Awesome. Well, if people want to get in touch or pitch you, where can they find you?
Just hit me on email. I'm Matt@commerce.vc. Easy to find me. So
awesome. Well, thank you, Matt, for coming on. This has been great.
Thanks, James.
Thanks for tuning in to Unlocking Retail Media. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe and share this show with your network. We'll be back soon with more insights to help you navigate the future of retail media. See you next time.